So now that you know a little bit about op art and the artist Bridget Riley, we are going to give making op art a try. So you're going to need your visual journal or another sheet of white paper. You're going to need a pencil, an eraser, a pencil sharpener. You may want to have some scissors available, a scrap sheet of paper. You are going to need black Sharpies. If you don't have black Sharpies, there are other options that you can use. You'll need to ask me about that. I'm just going to go over one or two options here. If you don't have black Sharpies and you have regular black marker at home, you could certainly use that. It will be very likely that you're going to want a skinny black marker, so if you have a skinnier one, that would be good, and then a fat one to use in combination. If you don't have black markers, you could use a black colored pencil, and if you're still striking out as far as those supplies go, reach out to me and we'll talk about other options that you have. You're also going to want to find something that is square to trace around. So I'm always grabbing my son's Duplo blocks. You could use a Post-it note, anything in your house that's a square. Now, when you pick your square, I would say no bigger than a Post-it note. It can be a little bit smaller. This is just a bit smaller than a regular Post-it note. So here is a regular Post-it note. Here is the Duplo square, so it is a little bit smaller. No bigger than this. So essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making mini practice compositions with op art. So the mini composition allows us to try something out on a small scale and get a feel for what's working for us and what's not. And we're going to continue with that practice here, where we're going to try out a variety of different op art techniques, and then you will be picking one at a later point to make a bigger composition with. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to lay out 5 squares on our page. Okay, that's our goal. So I lined my Duplo block up here for my pattern, and then I just traced around it with my pencil. If you can't fit 5 on your page, that's okay. What I would recommend is just opening to another page and doing the last couple ones, okay? So I went ahead and laid out my 5 squares. I do have 4 of my squares touching, okay? So this one and this one are touching, as well as the ones on top. Once you have that done, somewhere on your page, I want you to leave room to write the title op art. And I would encourage you to go ahead and write in the rest of the term for op to include optical, because even though we generally just refer to it as op art, I want you to remember when you go back and look at your journal that op stands for optical. And that I want you to remember that this is an art form that plays tricks with your eyes. Okay, so do make sure that you're giving this the title op art and that you're somehow including the rest of the word for optical. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started with our very first op art piece. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit and we'll get started. Okay, so I've zoomed in and I'm going to be working in this first box here. You will want your pencil, an eraser, and a ruler to start. If you don't have a ruler, then I would recommend getting something that has a straight edge. And a straight edge just refers to something that's firm enough with a nice even edge that's nice and straight along it. So here I'm using the example of a card that I had on my desk. So you could use a card, you could use a ruler, you could use a bookmark, anything that has that nice straight edge that's going to allow you to draw a nice straight line. So the very first thing we're going to do, whether we're using our ruler or whether we're using our straight edge, is we are going to be working from this corner here to this corner here. And we are just going to connect the 2 corners with a nice straight line. So I want you to see that I can use anything that has a straight edge. It doesn't always have to be a ruler, okay? My next step is I'm going to go from this corner to this corner, and I will connect the two. So essentially what you're doing is you are putting an X through the center of your box that you're working in. Okay, now that X, the next thing we're going to do is we are going to draw a horizontal line through the center. So before you do that, I want you to just kind of approximate where the center of this side is. So this is about the center. I'm not actually measuring because I know some of you don't have rulers at home, so I'm approximating. So I'm marking just lightly a dot on either side and approximating the center. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to line up my card so that it is touching this intersection of the X, and I'm attempting to get it lined up with those two dots. And I'm going to draw a line straight through. Okay, so that's it for the first step. Now what we're going to do is we are going to be dividing this up into a number of sections. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to come down to the bottom half, and in between this dot here and this dot here, I am going to approximate halfway on this side. I'm going to come over to the other side and approximate halfway over here. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to connect those. Now, I like to use a ruler or a straight edge, and what I like to do when I line it up is I am looking at this line, so I'm not covering this up, and I'm trying to draw my line parallel to that. So I like to have my ruler below it. And I am going to connect those two dots or make adjustments if I feel it's needed so that I have a straight line. Okay, so now we have two sections. We're going to come up here and do the same thing. So from here to here, I'm looking for about halfway. And again, you don't have to use a ruler to actually measure that out. From here to here, I find about halfway, and I mark it with my pencil. Okay, now what we're going to do is that we are going to connect these with our ruler or straight edge, whichever you're using. And remember that I like to be able to see the line I'm trying to draw parallel to. And parallel means the lines are running in the same direction, but they do not intersect. So I'm lining this up, and I'm trying to make sure that when I draw my line, it's going to be fairly parallel to this center one. And I'm going to connect that. Okay, so now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. So now we're going to break these up into even smaller sections. So we're going to work section by section, and we're going to start here. So we're going to look between the two dots, and we are going to mark a point. We're going to come over here and look for about halfway. Okay, I am going to keep my line hopefully parallel to these two lines. So I'm going to leave those visible when I connect with my ruler. Okay, so this has been divided, so now I'm going to come up to this one. And from here to here, I'm marking approximately halfway. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. From here to here, that's about halfway. And I'm going to do this for each section. And I'm going to walk you through this because this can be confusing. If you're somebody who feels like you really understand what's happening, then, you can work a little bit ahead, but double check and make sure you understand what we've been doing. So I'm going to break this section up. So I'm looking for a halfway point. I'm going to break this section in half. Line up my ruler or straight edge. Connect those. Now I'm going to break up this section in half. using those dots as my guide right now. Okay. So now what I have is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sections. You should have 8 sections. I'm gonna do that same process one more time. Now, if you don't have a really skinny marker, you may want to stop here, but your effect may not be as good. If you have a skinny marker, you're going to continue with me. And what we're going to do is we're going to break up each of these sections one more time. So I'm going to come in from here to here and break it in half. Okay, here to here, break it in half. Here to here, break that section in half. From here to here. Break it in half. This section. From here to here. Do our last 2 sections, and then we're going to count so that you know how many you should have. And if you don't have the same number, you probably need to go back unless you stopped earlier because you only have a fat marker. Okay, so we're going to count these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. You should have a total of 16 sections. Okay, now we're going to do the next step, which is adding color. And this is where the optical illusion starts to come in, or that op art effect, where you begin to look at something and it really begins to mess with your eyes. So I recommend, especially on the final composition that you do, that you start with a pencil and label these with a letter B, okay? So anything that you're gonna color in black, you would label with a letter B with pencil, just in case you notice a mistake. I'm not gonna do that for mine right here. Pretty confident in what I'm doing. So what I am gonna do though, in this one, is I'm gonna mark it with a Sharpie. And then I'm going to go back in, outline, and color. Okay. So essentially what's happening is every other section is going to get colored in black. So let's see if I can zoom in even closer for you without hitting the camera as I'm working, hopefully. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my Sharpie, and you may want to be really, on the final one, you would probably want to use your ruler as you're outlining. Right now, I'm just going to freehand this. And if you need to turn your book while you work, or your body, you should do that. So essentially every other one of these, and you are only going to start in the center section. I would not work ahead on this. I'm gonna go ahead and finish outlining these, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like once that's done. Okay, so I've finished outlining those, and now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and begin coloring those in. So each of the ones that has the black dot and that's outlined is going to get colored in. I do suggest that you work neatly and take your time. You definitely want to stay inside the lines on this type of art. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and finish coloring this in, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like. Okay, so I finished coloring that in, and now I'm gonna move on to the bottom triangle. And I want you to pay attention. It is not gonna start with black. It's going to start with white. So we're gonna leave this one white, and the next one is going to be black. So pay attention to that. So that's gonna be black, white, black, white, black, white, black. Okay? And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in and outline each of the ones that I marked with my black marker. And then I'll know to color each of those in. So you're gonna go through and outline each one of those. And just like I did before, I'm gonna come back and show you what that looks like when it's done. Okay, so here's what it looks like now that it's done being colored in as far as the top and the bottom triangle go. Now, I want you to watch and pay attention closely. What's gonna happen here is I'm gonna be looking at the lines inside of this triangle, and what's gonna happen is anytime I have a white line on either side of it, I will be putting a black line, okay? So black, this will stay white. This is white, that means this will become black. This is white, this will become black. This is white, this will become black, okay? Then what you're going to do once you have gone through and marked each of these is you're going to outline. So I'm going to continue with my process. So we have white, black, white, black, white, black, white, black. Let me finish over here. White, black, white, black, white, black, white, black. Okay. So I've got them all mapped out. And then I'm gonna go through with my skinnier Sharpie, and I'm going to neatly start to outline those. And you may want to work one at a time. So you may outline something and decide that you want to color it in so that it's just done. That's fine. But each of these lines that has, or each of these sections that has the black dot is going to become black. And you want to outline those and then color them in, okay? So we'll see what this looks like in a second when I've finished it. Okay, so the last two things that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a ruler or a straight edge, and I am going to just outline the edge where I'd had my pencil line before. I'm going to do that along the side and the bottom. And then the last thing I'm going to do once that's done is I'm going to use an eraser to erase any pencil lines that might be showing from the dots or from when we were planning it out. And then anywhere I see maybe I missed a little bit with my black marker, so you can see right here I need to fill that little space in, I'm going to go back in and touch it up or refine it. Okay, so then let's see what it looks like when we zoom out. It's going to look something like this when you're done. And I'm not sure how much you see the effect on screen, but if you have it in front of you in person, you'll notice that it really does start to play some tricks with your eyes and you start to feel like some things are moving. So that's our first attempt at op art. And we're gonna come back and we're gonna do 4 more of these.